Beneath the crystalline chandeliers of the imperial ballroom, 1,000 alien luminaries move like threads in a shimmering tapestry. Each step practiced, each glance deliberate. Lights pulse from the vaulted ceiling, casting soft reflections across polished obsidian floors. The air was thick with the perfume of foreign flowers, grown in gravity-defying gardens far above the planet's surface. Gowned and robed emissaries from across the quadrant mingled in a display of unity, or the appearance of it. Their languages mingled in a hum of diplomatic pleasantries, but one figure stood apart, absorbing none of it. Princess Kaylee sat alone at the edge of the hall, her legs dangling from a cushioned hover seat, her back straight as if rehearsing dignity, her eyes shaded with longing. Her skin was a pale shade of periwinkle, glowing faintly under the light. A biomechanical brace, sleek but visibly firm, hung her right leg from hip to ankle, its internal gears whirring quietly with every small movement. Her fingers tapped lightly on the seat's armrest, mimicking the rhythm of the music rising from the orchestra pit. Fast, lively, filled with celebration she could only observe. Surrounding her, the celebration surged on. Laughter rang out. Glasses clinked, gowns sparkled like distant nebulae. Dancers swirled and spun. Fluid as plasma, many of them airborne thanks to gentle anti-grav enhancements embedded in their attire. And though Kaylee watched every step, every leap, no one spared her more than a glance. She wasn't hidden, not exactly, but deliberately set apart. She had grown used to this kind of invisibility. People noticed her only when she fell, or stumbled, or lagged behind the tempo of the court. The Empress, her mother, stood encircled by dignitaries near the grand archway, clad in violet and emerald robes of state. Tall, elegant, with eyes like carved jade and posture that betrayed no doubt, she conversed fluently in half a dozen dialects, maintaining grace with effortless poise. But every so often, her eyes flicked toward Kaylee, briefly, cautiously, as if checking that her daughter still remained safely still, quietly composed, and above all, removed. Across the ballroom, unnoticed by most, Jace Marlowe adjusted the tray in his hands. His earthborn posture and human features made him an oddity among the attending staff, but he moved with quiet purpose. A white tuxedo jacket framed his lean build, and his eyes were sharp, attentive, not to status, but to emotion. As he wound through the room with flutes of iridescent wine balanced like fragile starlight, he noted details that others didn't. The flicker of envy in a minor ambassador's frown, the hollow laugh of a visiting general, and finally, the lonely rhythm of Kaylee's tapping fingers. He paused near the edge of the hall, eyes drawn not to the Empress or the ceremony, but to the small girl watching the galaxy she couldn't join. Kaylee noticed him noticing. Their eyes met, briefly. She blinked, almost startled to be seen, not as a symbol or a caution, but as a person. Jace offered the smallest of smiles before continuing on his path. But something about her stayed with him. 2 circuits later, he passed by again, this time slower. She still sat alone. The music had changed, more playful now, filled with lilting melodies and syncopated beats. The dancers adapted, laughter bubbling, as they wove new patterns. Kaylee's hands moved again, left, right, beat, beat, but her shoulders sagged as she watched them fly. Jace's fingers twitched on the tray. Something inside him stirred, familiar, uncomfortable, necessary. He returned his tray to the service alcove and crossed the floor, no longer a shadow. Kaylee saw him approaching, her expression unreadable, her posture straightened. Jace stopped a few paces away and bowed, not too deep, not like a servant to royalty, but like one dancer to another. "Your Highness," he said gently, "may I ask you something unusual?" She tilted her head. Her eyes, large and bright, narrowed slightly in curiosity. She was accustomed to adults speaking around her, rarely to her. "I've watched you tap along to every song tonight," Jace continued. "You feel the rhythm better than most. So, would you honor me with a dance?" Around them, space seemed to tighten. The music continued, but the conversations near them thinned into awkward silence. One of the guards at the wall shifted uncomfortably. Kaylee blinked. "You want to dance with me?" she asked. Not insulted, just confused. "If you're willing," he said, "I'd be honored." Kaylee looked past him toward the cluster where her mother stood. The Empress was no longer in conversation. She was watching, eyes sharp, unmoving. "I can't dance like them," Kaylee whispered, gesturing with a slight nod toward the dancers. "Not with this." She tapped her brace, as if to prove it. "You don't need to," Jace replied. "You only need to dance like you." For a moment, the music seemed to fall away, replaced by the rapid echo of her pulse. Kaylee inhaled, slow and trembling, then reached out her hand. Jace took it with both of his. Together, they stepped onto floor. The crowd parted, not with reverence, but uncertainty. Murmurs stirred like dust in sunlight. Royal aides glanced toward the Empress, but she neither moved nor spoke. Her face remained unreadable. Kaylee took a hesitant step. The brace clicked softly. Jace matched her pace, keeping one hand loosely in hers, the other guiding without pressure. There was no spin, no flourish, no impossible leap. Only movement, gentle, awkward, real. Then something changed. Kaylee grinned. It wasn't polished or courtly. It was wild, crooked, radiant. She found her balance, adjusted, swayed again. Jace grinned back. He lifted his arm, inviting her to twirl. She turned, slowly, unsteadily, but she turned. Applause didn't erupt. Gasps didn't echo. But a stillness held the room, charged and fragile. On the dais, the Empress remained frozen, her hands clasped tight. She had seen her daughter's face scrunch in pain, had heard her cries in sterile medical bays, had watched her retreat behind etiquette and silence. But she hadn't seen this. Not in years. Maybe ever. Kaylee took another step. And another. She laughed. And the galaxy shifted just slightly in its orbit. When the music ended, Jace bowed low. Kaylee curtsied, unsteady, proud. The silence broke in soft ripples. A few guests clapped cautiously. One alien noble raised a glass. Somewhere, someone whispered protest. But it didn't matter, because the Empress was no longer looking at her court. She was looking at her daughter. And Kaylee was looking back, unflinching, smiling. Jace escorted her back to her seat and said nothing more. He turned to leave, but before he disappeared into the crowd, Kaylee spoke. "Thank you." He paused, turned and nodded. "You did all the work." She lifted her chin. "But you asked." Jay smiled again, softer now, and slipped away. The music resumed. The night carried on. But a seam had been opened, a moment that couldn't be undone. Not by silence, not by protocol. In the shadows above, artificial stars glittered against the dome of the ballroom, and far below them, planets spun unaware. But here, something had begun. Something fragile, improbable, and very much alive. The clinking of glasses resumed, though more subdued than before. Conversations reignited, but the rhythm of the evening had shifted. A single dance, performed not with elegance but with sincerity, had left a ripple that neither the chamber's architects nor the event's planners had anticipated. From her elevated platform, Empress Delara stood still, fingers tightening ever so slightly around the stem of her chalice. She hadn't taken a sip since the dance began. Her face remained an alabaster mask of poise, but inside, something writhed, subtle and unfamiliar. The High Chancellor beside her cleared his throat, murmuring some perfunctory remark about the symbolic importance of inclusion and cultural tolerance. Delara did not answer. Her eyes had not left her daughter. Kaylee now sat straight back once more, a faint flush on her cheeks, her expression calm but far away, like a child who had glimpsed a forbidden sunrise. The Empress could not decide what disturbed her more, that Kaylee had defied the boundaries so carefully constructed around her, or that she had flourished in doing so. Delara turned abruptly and exited the dais, trailing a wake of hushed speculation. Her guards fell into place, but she waved them back as she entered the side corridor. The silence, there was not a relief but a mirror, offering no escape from the vision still burning in her mind. Kaylee smiling, laughing, dancing with a human server. Unshielded, ungraceful, imperfect, and undeniably alive. In the privacy of her chamber, she stood before the tall window that overlooked the blackness of space. Stars blinked indifferently. She had ruled for 17 cycles, brokered peace across 5 systems, and yet she had never felt so destabilized. Her daughter's birth had been a moment of beauty marred by tragedy. Delara remembered the sterile lighting of the medical wing, the look on the physicians' faces. A rare neurological deformity, they said, a condition that would never fully heal, not even with the Empire's best biomech augmentations. Her consort, Lord Kalian, had held their daughter first. He had kissed her brow and whispered that she was perfect. 2 months later, he was killed in the Zetheron insurrection, torn from life in a flash of ion fire and political betrayal. From that day forward, Delara had vowed to protect Kaylee as fiercely as she defended her empire. But over time, protection became restriction. Freedom became danger. And joy became a luxury Kaylee could not afford. A tone chimed from the side console. A security advisor's voice came through, tight with professional discomfort. Your Majesty, the human who danced with the princess. He is being questioned by protocol enforcement. Should we continue, or... She hesitated. Logic dictated action. Protocol had been breached. The human had approached royalty without invitation, initiated physical contact, disrupted a royal gathering. These were facts. Yet facts had nothing to say about the look on her daughter's face as she turned beneath the ballroom lights. The way her limp had become a rhythm, not a burden. Bring him to me, she said at last. No audience. The room fell silent again. It took only minutes. The door hissed open. Jace Marlowe entered with cautious steps, his white jacket removed, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing faint scars and calluses, signs of labor and life beyond diplomacy. He bowed, low and respectful, but not groveling. Delara did not sit. She studied him the way she studied political adversaries, assessing poise, intent, weakness. He looked tired but calm. No fear, only the careful awareness of someone who had already accepted consequences. You are aware, she began, that touching the royal heir without permission is an executable offense under Varelian code? Jace didn't flinch. I am now. A flicker of something, not amusement, but curiosity, passed through her. You approached my daughter publicly, without clearance, in front of the court. She looked like she wanted to dance, he replied. So I asked. She is not like others, Delara said carefully. Her condition. I noticed, he said gently, but I didn't see it stopping her. Thalara's fingers twitched. She wasn't accustomed to being interrupted. She wasn't accustomed to being spoken to with such directness by someone who didn't owe her allegiance. And yet, there was no arrogance in his tone, just certainty. I've seen that look before, Jace continued. Back home, my sister used to watch the dancers at school, just like that. She has cerebral palsy, struggled with coordination. For years, she was always on the sidelines, until one day, someone asked her to join, not to perform, just to be part of it. Was that someone you? No, he said with a soft smile. It was another girl. She didn't care if my sister stumbled. She just wanted her there. That moment changed everything. Gave her confidence, community, life. The Empress remained still. Her voice, when it came, was low and laced with something colder. Do you believe my daughter lacks life? I think she's been given survival, Jace said. But not living. They're not the same. The silence that followed was sharp enough to wound. He could feel the weight of his own words. Risky, perhaps fatal, but he didn't take them back. He had seen Kaylee's joy. That was worth the risk. To his surprise, Delara turned away. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You assume I don't want her to be happy. I don't assume anything, Jay said. But I think fear can be louder than love sometimes. And it makes us do the wrong kind of protecting. She exhaled. It was not quite a sigh. More like the soft collapse of something long held. She walked toward a window again, arms folded, her silhouette a portrait of regal stillness. You presume much for a man with no rank. I've lived long enough to know rank doesn't keep people from being alone, he said. This time, she did not reply. A pause stretched between them like a taut thread. And then she said, almost absently, she laughed. Jace tilted his head. She did. I hadn't heard it in months. Years, perhaps. Her hand found the edge of the windowsill. When she was little, She used to laugh at everything. Birds, lights, my voice. It was wild, pure. Then one day she stopped. I didn't notice right away. And when I did, I didn't ask why. Jace didn't interrupt. She is my only child. My legacy. If something happens to her, the line fractures. The empire wavers. I cannot afford to lose her. And maybe, Jace said softly, she can't afford to lose herself. The words hung in the air. Delara turned to face him once more. For the first time, her expression cracked. Only slightly. There was no decree, no threat, just the haunted look of a mother who had finally glimpsed her own blindness. You may go, she said. He bowed again, slower this time. Thank you, Majesty. As he turned to leave, she spoke one last time, voice thinner now. What's her name? She asked. My sister? Lila. Send her my thanks, Delara said. For dancing. He hesitated, then nodded. I will. When he was gone, Delara remained alone, surrounded by silence and stars. She had ruled by strength, by foresight, by preserving image over vulnerability. But the image had cracked tonight, and instead of ruin, it had revealed something unexpected. Possibility. She did not know what would come next, but she knew she could not ignore what had happened. The galaxy was watching. The court would whisper, but none of that mattered now. Kaylee had laughed, and it had changed ever. The days that followed the Imperial Ball unfolded with a deceptive sense of normalcy, as though the galaxy had politely agreed to forget what it had witnessed. No official statements were made. No sanctions were issued. The court resumed its rituals. Diplomats filed back into session, and the endless machinery of empire continued to turn. But beneath that polished surface, something had shifted, silent, subtle, and irreversible. Kaylee felt it first. Her world, once confined to hushed halls and filtered air, began to breathe. The caretakers no longer ushered her away at the first sign of exertion. The hover chair remained and used in her chamber for days at a time. She walked, slowly and imperfectly, but on her own terms. Her brace still clicked with each step, but now the sound reminded her of rhythm, not failure. She practiced in secret at first, late at night, mimicking the steps Jace had shown her, not elegant, not even fully balanced, but hers. Movement became a kind of rebellion, joy, an act of defiance. The Empress noticed. From the upper gallery, behind panels of shimmering crystal, Delara watched her daughter limping along the garden paths below. No attendants trailed her. No hand hovered in panic. Just Kaylee, murmuring to herself, tapping her hand against her thigh in time with an invisible song. She stumbled once, caught herself, smiled, kept going. Delara exhaled slowly, as if releasing something ancient from her chest. Later that evening, she summoned her daughter, not as a sovereign to an heir, but as a mother uncertain of her place. Kaylee entered with cautious curiosity. She wore no formal gown, just soft linens and a pair of adaptive sandals. Her brace had been polished. Her hair, unstyled, fell loosely to her shoulders. She walked with quiet determination, not toward her mother's throne, but to a low set of cushions laid out beside the garden pool. The Empress did not object. She joined her there, letting the silence linger between them like a fragile bridge. You've changed, Delara said after a while, not unkindly. Kaylee tilted her head. I've always been like this. I just didn't show it. The honesty pierced more deeply than any ceremonial blade. Delara folded her hands in her lap. Was I wrong to protect you? She asked. Kaylee looked up, her voice steady. You weren't wrong to love me, but love without trust isn't safety. It's a cage. Delara felt the words settle into her bones, heavy and unflinching. There was no accusation in her daughter's tone, only truth, a child's truth, wiser than any treaty. I fear they would break you, Delara said quietly. They still might, Kaylee replied, but at least let me fight for myself. That night, Delara stood before a council and gave a simple order: reinstate Jace Marlowe to active service. When the chamber fell into stunned silence, she added, and schedule him an audience private. With me. He was summoned the next day. The room he entered was not the grand throne chamber, but a smaller observatory overlooking the galactic rift. No guards, no formality, just the Empress seated alone, watching stars dissolve into nothingness. You spoke boldly, she said without preamble. You listened, Jace replied. A flicker of amusement, small but genuine, touched her lips. It is rare for anyone to challenge me. Rarer still for someone to be right. I wasn't trying to be right, Jace said. I just couldn't stand watching her be invisible. She's always been visible, Delara countered. To you, maybe, he said, but not to herself. Delara leaned back, fingers interlaced. You understand children. I understand being underestimated, he said. That's not unique to kids. You were not born to this court. You hold no lineage, no power, no standing. And yet you moved something in her that I, for all my resources, could not. I didn't move her, Jay said. She was already moving. I just joined her. A silence passed between them, not tense this time, but reflective. She studied him, this human with no title and no fear, and saw something that transcended caste or bloodline. I want you to stay, she said finally. His brow rose. As what? Her gaze drifted to the stars. Whatever she needs. A tutor, a mentor, a friend. And what about what you need? He asked. She looked at him then, sharply. You love her, he said. But have you ever danced with her? The question caught her off guard, not because of its boldness, but because it never occurred to her before. She, who had presided over a dozen coronations, danced with generals and rulers, given speeches that shook empires, had never taken her daughter's hand simply to share joy. I wouldn't know how, she admitted. You'll learn, Jay said. She'll teach you. When Kaylee entered the observatory later that evening, she found the two of them seated side by side, not in confrontation, but in something quieter. The Empress rose and extended her hand. Kaylee blinked. What? A lesson, Delara said softly. If you're willing. Kaylee's breath caught in her throat. She nodded. They stepped into the middle of the chamber. Jace activated the low ambient music, gentle, earthborn jazz. No courtly crescendos. No regal fanfare. Just rhythm. Delara held her daughter's hand. Awkwardly at first, then with more confidence. Kaylee guided her, correcting gently, counting the beat. They didn't move well. They didn't move gracefully. But they moved together. That night, the Empress ordered the construction of a new wing in the palace, an inclusive arts hall, open to all species, all abilities. Not a political maneuver, not a press stunt, a gift. The court was stunned. When asked by the High Chancellor why she had authorized such a radical shift in use of royal space, Delara answered simply, because survival is no longer enough for my people. We must teach them to live. Kaylee watched it all unfold with quiet pride, never asking for more than what she had received, to be seen, heard, and allowed to exist fully. As for Jace, he never sought elevation, though one was offered. Instead, he remained close, advising quietly, teaching often, always present, not as a servant, not as an equal, but as someone who had once offered a hand, and in doing so, helped a family begin to heal. Their story was not yet over, but it had found its rhythm. A year passed, measured not in official decrees or planetary revolutions, but in the soft milestones that marked the quiet reconstruction of a family. The grand chambers of the Varelian crown no longer rang only with ceremony. They pulsed with life. One silent corridors now echoed with music, with footsteps that limped and twirled, with laughter that rose like defiance against the stillness of history. Where once stood a fortress of protocol, something warmer had taken root. Kaylee stood at the edge of the central amphitheater, bathed in light from the crystalline dome above. A chorus of celestial bodies wheeled across the simulated sky overhead, orchestrated the rhythm of a simple melody rising from the chamber's lower stage. The music was hers, composed in secret, then refined with Jace's guidance, shaped into a delicate blend of Aurelian tonal progressions and Earth's percussive soul. It had no lyrics. It didn't need them. She stepped forward, slowly, the metal brace on her leg catching the light with every measured movement. A slight limp remained, but it no longer defined her. Around her, dancers from 7 different species joined her in a wide arc. each one unique in shape, color, and rhythm, but moving with collective purpose. There were wings and tails, extra limbs, and artificial exoskeletons. And yet, they moved as one. The audience was silent, not out of obligation, but reverence. These weren't nobles alone. Invited were the common citizens, students, patients from the imperial medical academies, and children of diplomats who had never before set foot in royal spaces. At the center of the front row, Empress Delara watched not with the cold appraisal of sovereignty, but the soft awe of a mother. She sat unadorned, the ceremonial regalia replaced by a modest gown in Kaylee's favorite shade of midnight blue. Her guard stood back. Her advisors had been instructed to remain silent. And beside her, for the first time in living memory, sat no foreign envoy, no venerated general, but Jace Marlowe. He leaned slightly toward her as the music swelled. She's improvising that second phrase. Delara raised an eyebrow, intrigued. It wasn't in rehearsal? No, he said, unable to keep the pride from his voice. She decided this morning. Told me she wanted to lead with instinct. The Empress smiled, not the clipped, diplomatic smile, designed for the cameras. A real one, small, flawed, real. On stage, Kaylee extended her arms, turning slowly. Her eyes searched the crowd not for approval but connection. She found it briefly in her mother's gaze. No words passed between them. None were needed. After the final beat, silence fell like snow. And then came the applause, not the hollow clapping of obligation, but a roar of approval that echoed through the vaulted chamber like a nova's bloom. Kaylee stood still, chest rising and falling, sweat at her brow, but her smile steady. She bowed. The dancers followed. And then the Empress rose. All sound stopped. She did not speak at first. She merely descended the steps, her long skirt whispering along the floor. When she reached the stage, she didn't turn to the audience. She looked only at Kaylee. "May I?" she asked. Kaylee's eyes widened. "You want to dance?" "I want to learn," Delara said. "If you'll teach me." A hush fell over the hall again, one not of confusion, but anticipation. Kaylee hesitated. Then, with an almost mischievous smile, she extended her hand. There was no music. They began anyway. Delara stepped with obvious caution, stiff at first. Kaylee adjusted gently, guiding with the confidence of someone who knew both gravity and grace. Around them, the dancers retreated, forming a ring. The crowd remained on its feet, watching not a monarch, but a woman stepping into her daughter's world, one hesitant motion at a time. And then, from the balcony above, the music began again, soft strings and distant percussion. Jace had cued it quietly, his fingers trembling slightly on the control panel. Below, mother and daughter moved with no symmetry, no mastery, but with connection. Kaylee stumbled once, and Delara caught her. Delara turned the wrong way, and Kaylee laughed. They continued, step by step, until the room itself seemed to breathe with them. Later, after the crowds had dispersed and the stars outside resumed their ancient orbit, Kaylee and Jay sat on the terrace overlooking the lower city. Lights shimmered below like grounded constellations. She leaned her head on his shoulder, exhausted but electric. "You knew she'd ask," she said quietly. "I hoped," Jace answered. "She was terrible." "She was beautiful," he corrected. Kaylee chuckled. "You're still not going to take that job, are you? Imperial advisor?" He snorted. "I'm not built for crowns." "She trusts you more than half the council. Probably why I should never be on it." They fell into comfortable silence, the kind that speaks of shared survival. A breeze swept across the terrace. From somewhere below, faint music played, young voices humming the melody Kaylee had written. "I used to think the stars were so far away," she murmured. "Now they feel closer." "Maybe you just got taller," Jay said with a grin. Kaylee elbowed him gently, then smiled. "You think she'll keep dancing?" "She already has." Inside, Delara stood alone in the observatory, watching her reflection in the darkened glass. For the first time in years, she didn't see a sovereign. She saw a mother, and in that reflection, Kaylee stood beside her. The galaxy hadn't changed overnight. There were still borders to negotiate, policies to draft, threats to face. But in one corner of the stars, the line between power and love had blurred, just enough to let something honest shine through. And it had all started with a single dance.